For as long as I can remember, my life has been dedicated to one person, my son, Noah. From the moment I first cradled him in my arms, my world shrank to fit within the scope of his needs. I'd always known that raising him alone wouldn't be easy, but I had made peace with it. Every decision I made, every sacrifice I endured, it was all for him. The hours I spent working extra shifts, the weekends I gave up, the dreams I put aside, all of it was to ensure Noah had a better life than I had. I believed in providing for him, not just financially, but emotionally, teaching him lessons that would last a lifetime. Noah was my everything. I poured my heart into raising him with kindness, patience, and love. I attended every school play, every parent-teacher meeting, and never missed a football game. I was always there, cheering him on, even when things were tough. I wasn't just a mother, I was his biggest fan, his unwavering supporter. I celebrated every small victory like it was the greatest achievement in the world. And when life threw challenges at him, I was there to help him pick up the pieces, to make sure he never felt alone. I believed, with every ounce of my being, that our relationship was unshakable. But somehow, somewhere along the way, I started to feel something shift. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but it was there, a quiet change that I didn't want to acknowledge. It wasn't obvious at first. It started small, like a whisper, a subtle distance that grew with time. The first sign came when Noah met Alexis, a woman he fell for quickly. At first, I wasn't concerned. It's normal for people to grow closer to their partners and shift focus. I figured it was just the excitement of a new relationship. But as the weeks passed, I noticed Noah was becoming less and less present in my life. He didn't call as often, and when he did, our conversations felt strained and superficial. I tried not to make a big deal of it. After all, he was in love, and that was a good thing, right? But then, his birthday came, and everything changed. For years, we had a tradition, dinner together, just the two of us, to celebrate his special day. This year, I asked him about his plans, expecting him to be just as excited as he always was. But instead, he casually told me he'd be too busy. No invitation. No reason why. I didn't push. Maybe he had plans with Alexis. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that he had other commitments. I didn't want to make a fuss. But when I logged into social media later that night, the truth hit me like a freight train. There he was, smiling in photos, celebrating with Alexis and her family. No mention of me, not even a small acknowledgement. My heart sank. I told myself to let it go, but the hurt was undeniable. That was the moment I realized something had changed. I had been replaced. Over time, the distance between us only grew. The calls became less frequent. The visits became even more rare. He stopped confiding in me. And when he did speak to me, it felt like I was talking to a stranger. This wasn't the Noah I had raised. This wasn't the boy I had sacrificed everything for. No, this was someone else, someone who seemed to have forgotten the foundation of love and sacrifice that had built his life. Then, the announcement came. Noah was getting married. On the surface, I was happy for him. This was a milestone, something he had dreamed of for years. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pushed further and further out of his life. When I heard the news, I tried to remain optimistic. Maybe this would be a new chapter for us, one where we could reconnect. I had to try, right? The wedding preparations were the final straw. I tried to help, tried to get involved, but I was met with indifference at best, outright coldness at worst. Every time I asked if I could do something, I was told that everything was already handled. No one asked for my opinion. No one seemed to want me there. When I asked Noah if I could help with any of the details, Alexis, with a polite but condescending smile, told me not to worry about the small things. She assured me they didn't want to bother me. It stung, but I swallowed my pride. I tried to convince myself it was just wedding stress, that they were overwhelmed, that things would be better on the big day. But as the wedding day drew closer, I began to wonder if I was simply fooling myself. Would my presence even matter to Noah anymore? Would I be left out completely? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe this was all a sign that our relationship had changed in ways I couldn't reverse. The wedding day arrived, and I prepared myself as best I could. I put on a dress I had bought weeks earlier, hoping to be presentable, hoping that despite everything, I could still be a part of the celebration. I arrived at the venue, a beautiful old estate transformed into a wedding hall, and approached the entrance with a mix of excitement and dread. But when I tried to check in, I was met with confusion. The staff looked at me blankly, checked their list, and then informed me that my name wasn't there. At first, I thought it was a mistake. There had to be some error. I tried to call Noah, but he didn't answer. My stomach tightened, my throat closed up. And then, there she was of Alexis, standing at the door with that fake smile, the one I had seen so many times before. She looked at me with an air of detached politeness, as if I were just an acquaintance she had to tolerate. "We decided it would be best if you didn't come," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "We don't want any drama." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't just her words, they were Noah's words, too. He had made a decision to erase me from this moment, from his life. I stood there in shock, unable to process the betrayal. My son, my flesh and blood, had chosen her, and in doing so, he had chosen to cast me aside. The pain was unbearable, but I turned away without another word. I walked out of that wedding hall, my dignity shattered, my heart in pieces. I knew then that everything had changed, that the bond we once shared had been broken in a way I could never repair. It wasn't just the wedding that had broken me. No, that moment was the final push. The culmination of everything that had gone wrong in our relationship. But it didn't start there. It began long before that day, long before I saw the coldness in Noah's eyes, before I felt the sting of being discarded like an old piece of furniture. It started with the whispers. At first, I thought I was imagining things, paranoia born of a mother's insecurities. But the more I observed, the more I began to notice a shift in the dynamics of our family. Noah was spending less and less time with me. Sure, he still lived at home, but he wasn't really home. He was often out with Alexis, attending parties, or hanging out with friends. When he did show up at the dinner table, his presence felt like a formality, something he was obligated to do rather than something he genuinely wanted. My mind raced with questions I didn't have answers to. What was happening to my son? Why wasn't he the person I raised anymore? Had all those years of sacrifice meant nothing? He was drifting away from me, but it wasn't just physical distance, it was emotional distance. That's the kind of pain that's almost impossible to put into words. When the person you love more than anything in the world starts to slip away from you, it's like a slow burn, a death of 1,000 cuts that you can't stop. I kept telling myself I was being unreasonable. I told myself it was just a phase. He was an adult now. He had his own life. He didn't need me like he once did. And maybe, just maybe, that was the way it was supposed to be. Every mother wants her child to grow up strong and independent, right? But this wasn't about independence, it was about rejection. It was about the painful reality that I no longer held any real place in his life. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to ask where I had gone wrong. But every time I thought about speaking up, I was filled with fear. Fear that I would push him further away, fear that I would say something I couldn't take back. So, instead, I did nothing. I kept it all bottled up inside, hoping that things would change on their own. I kept pretending everything was fine, even though every day felt like a new form of betrayal. But then the phone call came. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when the call came in. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm, in fact. "Is this Mrs. Keller?" the woman asked. I hesitated, confused. "Yes, who's this?" I responded. This is Emily, the wedding planner for Noah and Alexis. I wanted to give you a final update on the wedding preparations. There's a small matter we need to address. My heart skipped a beat. A wedding planner? I hadn't heard from anyone about details for Noah's wedding. Not once had I been included in the planning. What is it? What's the issue? I asked, my voice steady despite the rising panic. The woman continued. Noah and Alexis have decided to downsize the guest list. They've made the decision to keep the ceremony private, just immediate family. Unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate you as part of the immediate family. She paused, as if waiting for me to process what she had just said. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but they wanted to keep it a very intimate event. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It was like I couldn't breathe. I gripped the edge of the couch to steady myself. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't a simple oversight. This was a deliberate exclusion. The weight of her words settled on me like a heavy blanket, suffocating me. My son, my only child, had chosen to cut me out of one of the most important days of his life. A day that I had envisioned for years, a day I had dreamed of being there to watch him start a new chapter with someone he loved. And yet, here I was, rejected. Invisible. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for what felt like hours. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. My emotions felt like a tangled mess of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How had things come to this? What had I done to deserve this kind of treatment? I thought back to all the sacrifices I had made, how I had put my dreams on hold, how I had worked 2 jobs just to give him the best life possible. I had poured everything into raising him, loving him, and in return, he had turned his back on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the events in my mind. I thought about the day I first found out Noah was serious about Alexis. At first, I had been excited for him. I had been hopeful that he had found someone who made him happy. But now, all I could see was the distance between us. All I could feel was the weight of his absence, not just physically, but emotionally. I tried to talk myself out of the hurt. I tried to convince myself that maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it was just a wedding, just a day. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't about the wedding at all. This was about something deeper, something more painful. This was about a son who had chosen someone else over his mother. This was about a relationship that had been torn apart, thread by thread, until there was nothing left but silence. The next morning, I made up my mind. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was okay. I had to confront him, no matter the consequences. I grabbed my phone and dialed Noah's number, my hands trembling. It rang several times before he finally answered. Hey, Mom, he said, his voice flat and distant. Why, Noah? Why didn't you tell me about the guest list? Why didn't you want me there? My voice cracked as the words tumbled out. There was a long pause on the other end. Mom, we've talked about this. We just wanted to keep things simple. Alexis and I decided. Decided? Decided to shut me out? After everything I've done for you? My voice was rising now, the hurt finally spilling out. You're making a huge mistake, Noah. I've always been here for you, but you're turning your back on me, and for what? Her? Another long pause. Mom, please, it's not like that. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. That word hit me like a slap in the face. Dramatic? Is that how you see me now? Like I'm some kind of burden to you? I bit back tears. Noah, I've been here for you every step of the way. I don't deserve to be treated like this. Mom, you don't understand. It's not about you. It's about me and Alexis. We need to start our own life. His voice was distant, like he was speaking from a place I couldn't reach. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like I was suffocating. The realization hit me hard. My son had made his choice. And it wasn't me. I understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I understand. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of my son's words lingering in the silence. It felt like a slow-motion crash, the realization that Noah was no longer the person I had raised, the person who had once needed me. And it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. No, it was about something far more painful. It was about me losing him, piece by piece, and now, I was at a crossroads. I hung up the phone with him that night and sat there for what felt like hours. My mind was racing with questions that had no answers. Was I being unreasonable? Was this truly the way things were supposed to be? Or had I somehow failed him along the way? I had been a single mother for so long, doing everything I could to give him a better life. There had been moments when I thought about my own happiness, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I poured every ounce of energy into Noah, hoping that one day he would see the love I had given him and understand the sacrifices I had made. But now, all that seemed to have amounted to nothing. The next few days passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, and tried to keep my mind off Noah's rejection. But it was impossible. It was as though a part of me had been hollowed out, and no matter what I did, I couldn't fill the emptiness. I would sit in his room at night, staring at the empty space where his things used to be. The place where he had once sat and laughed, where we'd spent hours talking about life and dreams. And now, he was gone. Gone in a way that felt permanent. Gone, not just physically, but emotionally too. The hardest part was seeing how easily Alexis had slid into my son's life. She had become his priority, and I was left to watch from the sidelines. I wasn't sure when it had happened, when I had become the outsider, but it didn't matter. What hurt the most was how quickly it had all changed. How easily he had made the decision to cut me out. One afternoon, a few days after our phone conversation, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to see him. I needed to know if this was really what he wanted, if he was truly willing to let go of our relationship without a second thought. I drove to his apartment, my mind racing with a mixture of fear and anger. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew that I couldn't stay silent anymore. When I arrived, I parked my car outside the building, staring up at his window. My heart pounded in my chest, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, walking toward the building. My hands shook, but I kept walking. As I reached the door of his apartment, I hesitated for a moment. Should I knock? Should I just barge in? I wasn't sure. But then, I heard a voice from inside. Mom? Is that you? It was Noah's voice, soft but clear, and for a split second, I almost turned around and walked away. But something stopped me. I wasn't ready to give up yet. I pushed the door open, and there he was. Noah. He looked different, as if the boy I once knew had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize. He was sitting on the couch, his eyes cold, distant. There was no warmth in his gaze, no recognition of the bond we once shared. Can we talk? I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to remain calm. Noah didn't immediately respond. He looked down at his hands, avoiding my gaze. Finally, he nodded, a faint sigh escaping his lips. I walked toward the couch and sat across from him, keeping a safe distance. I didn't want to invade his space, but I needed to make him understand. I needed him to hear me, to see me, not as a mother he could dismiss, but as the person who had always been there for him. I don't understand, Noah, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. How did we get here? How did I become a stranger to you? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and I could see that the words I was saying were hitting harder than he had anticipated. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. Mom, it's not like that, he said quietly. It's just. I don't know. Things are different now. Different? I repeated, my heart breaking as I stared at him. How is this different, Noah? You're telling me I'm no longer part of your life. You're excluding me from everything, like I don't matter. I paused, trying to gather my emotions. How is that different? That's not what family is supposed to be. I never meant to hurt you, Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. But you don't understand. Alexis and I, we want to start our own life. We need to figure things out on our own. It's not about you, Mom. It's just the way things are now. I felt the sting of his words. You're saying that it's just the way things are now? And that's it? Just like that? I shook my head in disbelief. I spent years taking care of you, Noah. I sacrificed everything for you. And now you're telling me it's just over, just like that? He looked away, guilt flickering in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. I don't know what to say, he finally admitted. I don't know how to fix this. Neither do I said softly, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. But I'm not going to sit back and let you push me out of your life. I won't. If you want to have a relationship with me, if you want this family to mean anything, then you need to make a choice. He stared at me for a long moment, as if weighing my words. Then, he looked down at the floor, defeated. I don't know what I want anymore. And that was the hardest part, he didn't know. My son, the person I had spent my entire life raising, didn't know if he wanted me in his life anymore. I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation hanging over me. I can't force you to make that choice, Noah. But I'm not going to beg you for something that should be a given. If you want to be part of my life, I'm here. But I won't keep chasing after someone who's decided I'm not worth it. I turned to leave, but before I could reach the door, I heard him call my name. Mom. I stopped but didn't turn around. I don't know what to do, he said, his voice small, almost pleading. But I don't want to lose you. I took a deep breath, my heart aching for the son I had lost and the man he had become. I'm not going anywhere, Noah. But you need to decide if you want me to be part of your life. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep holding on while you slip away. And with that, I walked out, not knowing if I had done the right thing, but certain that I had to take a stand. The days that followed were a blur. I'd walked away from Noah's apartment, unsure of what had changed between us, or if anything could be fixed. Each day felt like a step further away from him. I'd tried to fill my time with work, and I even went out with friends a couple of times, trying to force myself back into some semblance of normalcy. But nothing could distract me for long. Every time I walked past his old room, or saw something that reminded me of him, his old baseball glove, the drawings he'd made when he was younger, it was like a punch to the gut. The house felt too empty, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I had lost him. Not just physically, but emotionally, too. It was like we were two strangers who shared a past but no longer knew each other. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind. I couldn't help it. Had I said the wrong things? Should I have been gentler, softer, or perhaps more understanding? Or was it just the inevitable outcome of a relationship that had been stretched too thin for too long? But then, one evening, when the sun had just begun to set and the air was warm, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but my heart leapt in my chest as I saw the area code. Noah. I almost hesitated to answer. What would he say? Was he calling to tell me how angry he was, or maybe he was going to apologize? I had no idea. But I took a deep breath, pressed accept, and put the phone to my ear. Mom? Noah's voice sounded different this time. Softer, more vulnerable. Can we talk? I could feel the tightness in my chest loosen just a little, but I didn't let myself get too hopeful. Of course. Where are you? I'm at my place, he said, his voice faltering. Can you come over? I need to explain something. I agreed, my hands trembling as I hung up the phone. I drove to his apartment in silence, my mind running through the possibilities. What did he want to say? Had he had time to think it through? Was this the breakthrough we needed? When I arrived, Noah was standing outside, his arms crossed. He looked like he hadn't slept much, and his face was drawn. The anger from before had faded, replaced by something else, something uncertain. I got out of the car and walked toward him, my heart in my throat. "Noah, what's going on?" He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Finally, he looked up at me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day." I swallowed, trying to keep my composure. "And?" "I think I've been wrong," he admitted. "About a lot of things. About you. About our relationship. And about what I've been doing with my life." I didn't know how to react. Was he apologizing? Was he realizing the damage he'd done? I stood there, waiting for him to continue. "I've been so focused on myself, on Alexis, and on what I thought I wanted, that I completely shut you out," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't see how much it hurt you. I didn't see how much you've always been there for me. How much you've sacrificed. And I took it all for granted." I felt a lump in my throat. Was this the Noah I had raised? The one who, even when he was young, was sensitive and thoughtful? I didn't know what to say. My emotions were a tangled mess, but I could feel the weight of his words lifting the years of distance that had grown between us. "Noah," I said softly, trying to hold back tears. "You're my son. I don't need you to apologize. I just want to know that you see me. That you know I've been here all along." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I see you, Mom. I really do. And I've been an idiot for thinking I could just shut you out and pretend everything was fine." I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "You don't have to do everything on your own, Noah. You never did. You never had to." He lowered his head, his voice trembling. "I've been so scared, Mom. Scared of letting you down, scared of how you might see me, scared that I wouldn't live up to the expectations I thought you had for me. And instead of facing that, I just pushed you away." I felt my chest tighten, hearing the pain in his words. It was a confession, a raw moment of truth. And in that moment, I realized something important. We had both been afraid. I had been afraid of losing him, and he had been afraid of disappointing me. We had both been carrying the weight of our fears and hadn't known how to share them. I reached out and put a hand on his shoulder, pulling him into a hug. "Noah, I've always been proud of you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I whispered, my voice catching. "I know." We stood there for a long time, just holding each other, two people who had been through so much and yet, somehow, had found their way back to each other. It wasn't going to be easy. There were still a lot of things to work through. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hope, real, tangible hope, that maybe, just maybe, we could fix what had been broken between us. "I don't want to lose you again," Noah said, his voice steady now. "You won't," I promised. "I'm not going anywhere." We walked into his apartment together, the weight of everything that had happened between us still there, but somehow lighter. And as we sat down to talk, to truly talk about the things we had both been too afraid to say, I realized that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The beginning of healing, of rediscovering what it meant to be family. The weeks that followed were nothing like I had expected. They were challenging, messy, and at times, painful, but they were also the beginning of something new. Noah and I had opened the door to real communication, and that made all the difference. At first, things were awkward. We didn't know exactly how to bridge the gap that had formed between us over the years. There was still so much unspoken hurt and so many emotions that had been buried deep down. But we kept trying. We spoke openly about our fears, our disappointments, and our hopes for the future. It was slow, exhausting work, but it was also incredibly rewarding. Noah made the decision to take a break from his job and focus on himself. He needed time to process everything that had happened. It was a huge step, one that I hadn't expected, but I could see that it was exactly what he needed. He began seeing a therapist, which I was so proud of him for. Admitting you need help is never easy, but it's a sign of strength, not weakness. In those early days of our new journey together, there were still moments of tension. I couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of guilt for having allowed things to go on for so long without addressing the root of our issues. Why hadn't I spoken up earlier? Why hadn't I fought harder for us? But every time those feelings crept in, I reminded myself that I was doing the best I could. We were both learning, both trying. One evening, we sat down to have a heart-to-heart after dinner. I could tell something had shifted in Noah. His eyes had a new kind of determination in them, like he had finally made peace with the person he was becoming. I could see the weight had lifted from his shoulders. He wasn't the same angry young man I had known only a few months ago. He was growing into someone who could face the world with more clarity, more self-awareness. "Mom," he started, breaking the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About what I want, about who I want to be." I nodded, my heart in my throat. This was the moment. The moment I had been waiting for. "I know I've made a lot of mistakes. And I don't expect you to just forgive me overnight. But I want to try. I want to show you that I'm working on being better. Not just for you, but for myself too." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I had always known Noah had so much potential inside him, but hearing him say these words I never thought I'd hear from him, filled me with so much pride. He was taking responsibility. He was taking ownership of his life. That was something I hadn't seen in a long time. "You don't have to be perfect," I said softly. "You just have to keep trying. That's all any of us can do." Noah smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made my heart swell. "I'm trying, Mom. I really am." We didn't have all the answers that night, or the next. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that we had reconnected. We had acknowledged the distance, the pain, and the mistakes. And in doing so, we had begun to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when we stumbled, when old habits crept in. But I could feel that we were moving in the right direction. As for me, I realized that I had a lot of work to do as well. I had to learn how to let go of the guilt and shame that had kept me stuck for so long. I had to stop blaming myself for things I couldn't control. I had to accept that relationships are messy, and sometimes, we make mistakes, both as parents and as children. The important thing is not giving up, not letting go of the people we love, no matter how hard it gets. One afternoon, as we were sitting on the porch, talking about the things that mattered most to us, Noah looked at me with a look of quiet understanding. "I'm proud of us," he said. I smiled, my heart full. Me too. It wasn't a perfect ending. Life doesn't work that way. But we had something now that we hadn't had in a long time: mutual respect, trust, and the willingness to keep moving forward together. We still had a lot of work ahead of us, but we were in this together. I realized that family wasn't about being perfect or never making mistakes. It was about showing up for each other, even when it's hard. It was about facing the tough moments head-on and refusing to let go. Noah had started to carve out his own path, and I had found a new sense of strength in myself. We weren't the same people we had been before. We were better, stronger, more compassionate, and more willing to fight for what we had. And as we both moved forward, I knew one thing for sure: we would always have each other's backs. No matter what.